So hey guys, about a year ago I went and got my hair dyed blue, and of course earlier today I went and had it done again. And it kind of seemed like a good opportunity to talk about my hair and just kind of how it's kind of played a part in where I am now. Because when I was a kid, I always wore my hair the same way. It was always really short, and I think at least when I was really little, it was more or less kind of a bowl cut. And I think when I got older, late teens, I started wearing it. It was still short, but I started parting it to one side. And this was before I had met any transgender folks, before I knew anything about what all that was. And for a long time, I just kept my hair like that because it was just I really wasn't big for variety on my haircuts. I think, and maybe this is just a guy thing, but when you're I don't think that guys really do too much with their hair, comparatively. Just look at all the lists of services they have for hair places as far as, what they typically have for guys. Guys' haircuts are like $15 and they take 10 minutes, things like that. And, it was, I guess, for a long time, that was just how I wore my hair. And for those of you that have known me since I've been in the fandom, which might be some of you that actually knew me back then, um, my original persona was a tiger named Catfish, who I still use to this day. But his hair was black on the top and it had a blonde ponytail because for some reason this image really struck me as just cool. I don't know. I just like the way that it looked, especially on an anthro tiger. So I always kept his hair like that, and I decided at some point I wanted to do that with my hair. Now, I think at the time I was in college, I was working at the bookstore, and I decided that I was going to dye my hair to match. Now, I ended up growing my hair really long. It actually went down to my butt, but I never actually did the dye job. And I think it was in part because I thought at first it would be easy enough that I could figure out how to do it, but then I was never brave enough to actually try to do it myself. And so I just had long hair. And those of you that have seen me at cons over the years, I mean, surely you've probably noticed that, sometimes I have long hair, sometimes I have short hair, and over the course of the next 10 something some odd years, 10, 15 years, I kind of went through this cycle where I would enjoy having long hair. It's like I loved having the ponytail, and that was pretty much how I always wore it at the time. And then I was just like, okay, this is getting too annoying. It took, if when my hair was short, it took 15 minutes to dry. When my hair was long like this, it took 8 hours if you just let it air dry. And that was one of the things that, I never used to blow dry my hair because it was just, when it was short, you never needed to. When it was long, I just hadn't gotten used to the maintenance required with hair this long. And so I would go through the cycle. It's like I really want long hair, and then after I would have this long hair for a while, I would finally just cut it all off, and then be like, low maintenance hair again. And then I would decide after a while, start jonesing for having long hair again. So then it would go back down, and then I would continue going through this cycle. And I think it was after like the third time I cut off my ponytail, or maybe it was only twice. I don't really remember, but I kind of kept my hair long at that point, and I just always kept it that way because I always used to like having long hair. I used to like having short hair, but I always used to hate when it was in the intermediate stages. Too short to really do anything with, but not long enough to tie it back. And finally, when I reached this, the most recent iteration of having my hair long, one of the reasons why I had never looked into transitioning before or ever considered it was because I really didn't think that I would pass, as they say, or even come close enough for my own personal satisfaction. Even if it's just, I mean, maybe it doesn't look, like some people might not regard it as feminine enough or something, but this isn't about what other people think. This is just about, it's like insofar as how I look, it's like I needed to be happy with that. And for a long time I was just, I'd look at my reflection in the mirror, and I would never really be happy with what I saw. I never looked at myself in the mirror just for that reason. It was just like unless I had a fursuit head on, I didn't like looking at myself. And it was just kind of, one of those things that, in hindsight, all of this information seems obvious, but of course at the time it wasn't really clear to me. So, I was just always kind of taking this as just, I don't like looking at myself in the mirror, and that's all it was. But over time, I started to realize that it was not just, I don't know, that it was just not me just not liking my reflection, or at least that there were reasons for why I wasn't really happy with my reflection. And, it was kind of, I think that it all finally hit. Well, let me back up a step, because I mean in 2008 I met a transgender friend of mine who, I would never have known that they were transgender if they hadn't told me. And I'm not going to mention their name here, because I don't want to. But suffice it to say that for the first time I actually saw somebody, that I knew personally, that I came to know very well, that was transgender, that, at least as far as I was concerned, past, that I would never have known if I didn't know better. And it really just was something that never bothered me. It never affected my thought process as far as how I looked at my friend. It's just like this, she's a woman. And that's all there was to it. And, it's kind of one of those things that, even though I had this exposure to, what I would like to call a success story, because she's very good at it, and it was kind of one of the things that has always been a resource for me for information on all kinds of subjects, just because I know that she will tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear, and all sorts of good advice and that sort of thing. And I knew her for a long time, and we were good friends, we still are. And it was just kind of one of those things where she and I, even though we saw each other all the time, it was just, I was always afraid to pull that trigger, just because I suppose a little bit of the fear of the work reaction, a little bit of the fear of just, crossing the line of no return, and other things of that factor. That, and I thought maybe, in order to be transgender, you had to fit certain requirements, which I guess for a lot of us is probably fairly common. And I'm looking at a certain person in particular when I say this. It's like there are no requirements to be trans, or at least no specific requirements. Let's just put it that way. There may be personal requirements on behalf of yourself, but there's no checklist you have to satisfy. So back to the point is that, with my hair, I mean, my hair is kind of, I never used to really care that much about my hair. And when, so, and I guess just to sidestep back to where I was a minute ago, it was just, we, I always had, I guess, thoughts about, I mean, if you've seen any of my fursuits in the last 15 years, I mean, it's like all of my suits are female characters, and it's like pretty much all of them. I think maybe the first one was male, but that was just like a prefabricated suit that or pieces that I already bought pre-made. And most of them have been female, and a lot of my protagonists are female. And it's kind of, I think, at least my subconscious telling me what I should have already known. But I don't think it's really a coincidence, because like and for a long time I expressed being transgender through the costumes, through the fursuits, like Lauren, like Topaz, like Kate, and all the others. I would have these. They would all have different personalities that I would be able to express in suit. And I was always more comfortable interacting with people that way. Just, I think, just because subconsciously my brain knew before I did. And this was like this was, for a long time, this was enough for me. This was, I wasn't, at least at the time, I was thinking, I'm not necessarily transgender, or if I am, this is enough to satisfy me for the time being. And I suppose it was, but it was also a way of staying safely ensconced in my comfort zone, because I was so nervous, I guess, about having those conversations with my coworkers, about having those conversations with my parents, with, I knew my friends would be accepting, but it was a very difficult hurdle to cross. And it was when I finally decided that I wanted to dye my hair blue, like Lauren's. I decided to go and look into the policies at work to see if this was something that was listed in the regulations, as it were. And I checked the department policy, I checked the grader policy for the whole company, and there was nothing in it that said that you couldn't dye your hair. And so I went ahead, and one morning I took off and I just went to the salon and did it. And I didn't tell them that I was going to do it, in part because I was afraid of the possibility that they would tell me no. And I went into work the next Monday and everything was fine. Nobody really said anything. I think a couple of people had given me compliments, but for the most part, there was really no reaction. And, it was here I thought, then I was fine. It's like I thought there was no problem. And then 2 to 3 weeks later, I get pulled into my supervisor's office and he says that there's, an issue with my hair, which is like, I didn't really understand this, not the least of which because I think he was trying to say that it took them time to formulate a response, but to me, it just seemed like if there was a problem, you should have told me right away, or at least within a few days. But it's like, and I kind of felt a little bit singled out because they said afterwards that they were going to change the appearance policy so that you couldn't have non-natural hair colors. And, I thought that this was a little bit hypocritical, or I don't know, I felt a little bit targeted, not necessarily because of the transgender thing, because I mean at the time they didn't know that, but it was just the fact that I did something that was not against policy, and yet for some reason they're telling me that I can't do it, that it looks unprofessional, even though, or something along those lines. I don't think they specifically told me unprofessional, but I think that was the gist that I was getting. And it was just, there are plenty of people at the company I worked at that had non-natural hair colors. There were several ladies in the office that regularly dyed their hair every few weeks. So I didn't really understand why this was a problem. And it was also kind of one of those things that once I finally did it, it was what encouraged me to start dressing female at home. And it was what kind of convinced me to push forward with it and eventually to finally just take the plunge and just start doing all the things that I'm doing right now. And, all of this stuff has just boiled down to making me just a happier, healthier person. And, I mean, you can tell that I kind of, yeah, I don't know. I just found it very irritating that it felt like if, I'm usually a fairly straightforward person, and it felt like if there was a problem, you should have told me, and now that it's already done, it's not fair of you to say that I can't. So, I mean, I think that I should have been allowed to just be grandfathered in and just be permitted to dye my hair blue whenever I wanted to. But as a result of still being at that position, I didn't dye my hair after that just because I was never quite willing to test the waters to see how far I should push it because I didn't know if they would discipline me if I did it second time. I mean, they said they were going to put it in their policy, but the thing was that then Christmas happened and then 2 months later COVID happened, so it really just never really came up again. But, if all things considered, the dye job lasted a long time. I mean, if you see any of the videos I shot, I mean, you'll probably be able to date how long it was or just kind of guesstimate based on the darkness of the hair. But the dye job actually lasted almost a full year without really needing touch up. And I think it was about 8 or 10 months in that you finally started seeing the ends of it start to look blonde instead of actually just having the dark blue color. And insofar as in this time where I'm not at my previous job and trying to determine my path forward for through a number of reasons, I decided that even though I know it was an expense, that during the time between jobs, I wanted to dye my hair again for a few reasons. Because for one, this is me, this is who I am, in terms of both myself and my character. I mean, in terms of personal expression, it's like this is me, and this is really how I want to be. And it's like if, insofar as employment, I mean, that's still being worked on. That's still up in the air. I'm still working with the job coach, and there's more to come about that. But insofar as this, I wanted to diet both as a personal thing for me, and also if and when I get another position, I just want to be able to go into the interview and just be pretty much, this is what you're getting. If you end up picking me, if this is it, because I don't want to have to be dealing with this at the next job that I have, if whatever that happens to be. And this is just how I want to keep things, and this is I like it. But I guess to wrap things up really quick, it's just this. My hair has definitely played, I guess, a large part in this latest step of my journey. And for the next few days in the shower, it's probably going to look like I killed a Smurf. But if it's anything like last time, after a couple of good showers, then the dye really won't keep rubbing off on things, and then it'll just be business as usual until I decide to do it again or something else happens. But in any case, this is my hair, so that's it for now, and I guess I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks for watching, and if you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. You can also find me on Twitter and a few other places on the web, or support me via Patreon or Ko-fi. Zebra hugs!